We got a taxi from the hotel and left the car there. Traffic around the event meant we had to walk the last mile or so to the ground. We passed through the 17th century Aston Hall, soaking up the atmosphere. Sitting on the grass of Aston Hall with a bacon roll and a coffee, we people watched, soaking up the atmosphere. But one vendor that we had just bought our bacon back from started vomiting behind our stall, which added a certain culinary tension. Looks were exchanged. We contemplated ditching the grub, but we pressed on. I can't bloody wait. It's going to be amazing. The atmosphere was incredible. I'd say that people were vibing, but I would hate myself too much. The venue provided free water and the bars and food stands were buzzing. We discovered a baffling self-service cider tap, which confused us enough to abandon drinking altogether after a couple of pints. But we didn't want to miss a second. The bands hit hard and fast. About 3 songs each, 2 of their own, followed by a Sabbath cover. The changeovers only took 7 minutes, thanks to a rotating stage, like a heavy metal Lazy Susan, relentless in the best way. So we really had to abandon drinking quite early. Popping to the toilet meant missing out big time. Mastadon, Rival Sons, Anthrax and Halestorm were all excellent. Mastadon had just lost their long-time guitarist Brent Hines, who upon leaving said, "I won't miss being in a shit band with horrible humans." They seemed pretty cool though, and definitely not shit. I liked Rival Sons, even though I didn't know much about them, but Anthrax were a standout early on. Their energy and gratitude to be there summed up the spirit of the day. I haven't always been the biggest Anthrax fan before, but now I'm diving into their back catalogue. Joey Belladonna is super cool. He was awesome, as was Lizzie Hale Halestorm, another band I got to see for the first time.
So far, Mastadon,
Rival Sons,
Jason Momoa,
Jason fucking sex penis.
Sex Penis.
Then, Lamb of God. My God, my Lamb of God. You get the picture. They opened with Laid to Rest, one of the greatest metal songs of all time. And then Redneck. Randy Blythe gave everything. He fell over, drew his shoes into the crowd and left nothing behind. I and everybody else was speechless. Looking back, Lamb of God was an early highlight. We were thinking, how the hell do you top that? They set an incredibly high bar.
For those of you who do not know, we are Lamb of God from Richmond, motherfucking Virginia. We've returned to Birmingham, England, the birthplace of heavy metal, to throw down with you motherfuckers.
You know, so many bands must be sick of playing their big songs, but it was clear that they knew that this event was way bigger than them and they needed to come with their A game. Lamb of God was such a great example of that. It was all killer, no filler. It was almost like you didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but you just knew you were watching something very significant. Even talking about it after, it was quite emotional because it was just so much to take in. Between acts, they played Ozzy clips, his cameos, outtakes, interviews. It never stopped. It was like curated chaos. And shout out to Tom Morello for that. It was a lot to take in, like a sensory overload. And then came the supergroups. Seeing Nina Bettencourt live was surreal, one of my all-time favourite guitarists. And Jakey Lee played some of Ozzy's most iconic tracks. Mike Bordin, my drumming idol, was there too. They then showed this video featuring Jack Black, then Scott Ian's son and Tom Morello's son, which was funny, but it paid homage to Ozzy in the kind of School of Rock style. Alice in Chains nearly broke Chris. I'm pretty sure he was in tears throughout. It was that powerful. Their set was a reminder of some of the losses that have touched so many of the bands, like Lane Staley and Mike Starr of Alice in Chains, Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul Abbott of Pantera, Jeff Hanneman of Slayer, Eddie Van Halen, obviously with that Sammy Hagar connection for the event, Cliff Burton of Metallica, Randy Rhoads of Ozzy Osbourne and Quiet Riot, Ronnie James Dio of Black Sabbath and Rainbow, among others. And thank the heavy metal gods that Slash died and came back to life. Then Gojira were incredible, heavy and theatrical, bringing out an opera singer doing a song about the French Revolution. I'd really wanted to check them out after they played such a cool part in the opening of the Paris Olympics. Then a drum off followed. I usually zone out for drum solos, even though I am a drummer, but they made it musical and full of energy. Chad Smith, Travis Barker and Danny Carey did their thing. And then KK Downing from Judas Priest played Breaking the Law, a true Birmingham moment. Very cool, and those songs sound bloody brilliant live. Then Sammy Hagar appeared, Van Halen's frontman during my favourite era. I'd have loved to have seen a Van Halen song, but they played Rock Candy, the Montrose classic. I had really hoped that he was going to do something with Wolfgang Van Halen, but Wolfie had to pull out because he was touring with his band Mammoth as a support for Creed. This part of the supergroup featured heroes like Tom Morello, Ronnie Wood, and the Papa from Ghost, Rudy Sarzo, Steven Tyler, and so many others. It was like metal's own Avengers Assemble. But it wasn't pretentious at all. Everyone up there was playing like they were kids. Once again I was drawn back to my teenage years. I could never have dreamed of this. Jason Momoa emceed for part of the evening and even jumped into the pit for Pantera. Another bucket list item for me. Zakk Wylde shredded with total reverence for Dimebag Darrell. I'd have loved to see more Pantera, but their set was a total Sabbath tribute, which isn't surprising given Zack's long-standing relationship with Ozzy and deep love for Sabbath. Tool was something else entirely. I'm lucky to have seen them a few times before, but they never disappoint. Where some bands hit you in the chest, Tool get inside your head and rearrange the furniture. In a lineup packed with legends, Tool stood out by doing what they've always done, refusing to be like anyone else. Then came Slayer. Even in a short set, Slayer sounded exactly like Slayer should, hostile, uncompromising and utterly indifferent to whether you were comfortable with it. Guns N' Roses smashed it with Welcome to the Jungle and Paradise City. That was the first time I'd seen Guns N' Roses with their original lineup. I did see them at Download when it was just Axl from the original lineup, but it was pretty diabolical. And Axl was up to his usual tricks, pissing the crowd off massively. I'm happy to say that they were a million times better at this show.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome friends of mine, friends of ours, and friends of Ozzy's, Metallica.
Metallica then closed the main set with their usual power and polish. I'm really lucky that I've seen them a few times before, including at Glastonbury, but they were as good as ever. It was a great set and they really amped up the show. Then came the moment, Ozzy. I'd expected a parade of guest vocalists at this point, assuming Ozzy was too frail to sing. But no, he came out and absolutely nailed it. Sitting on a custom-built throne, struggling with his Parkinson's, he still commanded the stage. It was emotional, not just for me, but for everyone. He opened with I Don't Know, which is one of my favourites, then Mr. Crowley, and then by Mama I'm Coming Home, he had everyone in bits. People were trying to sing, but most of us choked. It was just all too much. The significance of that song, that moment, and everything around it was a lot to take in. And then Crazy Train, I didn't want it to end, but you could tell physically Ozzy had given it everything. Then Black Sabbath. In 1999, in reference to playing before Black Sabbath, Phil Anselmo had said that if Pantera are the kings of metal, you are all about to hear God. So blessed were we to be in this position to taste divinity. There was a long wait for Black Sabbath to take the stage. The rotating stage had already turned round, and it was late. There was a 10:30 curfew, but at 10, still no band. But then they came. They finally came out and opened with War Pigs. Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne. Unbelievable. Yes, it wasn't musical perfection, they're older now, but it was inspiring as a milestone or a landmark to the cultural history of heavy metal. NIB, Iron Man and then Paranoid. Off the charts. Just 4 songs, but they did it, and it sounded amazing. The crowd were with them every step of the way. By this point, everyone was so overstimulated and emotionally invested, it was almost a blur. The fireworks exploded and we were buzzing. What had we just witnessed? But the reality set in. We had no room for the night and a long trip home. So we had to prioritise. And number 1 was snacks. We walked into Birmingham, fighting with the non-existent Ubers, eventually getting the last bus going near the airport. It was crushed with people. The undercarriage scraped on the road from the weight, but somehow we made it to Chris's car and slept very uncomfortably inside. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop watching videos from the gig. I read everything I could. It felt surreal that we'd been there. My Spotify filled up with Sabbath, Ozzy and all the others. Even my family holiday was soundtracked by it. That buzz was palpable. I was living the heavy metal dream. And then, just 17 days later, the sucker punch. Ozzy Osbourne had died. My wife Lucy told me, and I didn't believe her. I thought it was another AI hoax or internet rumour. But then it was confirmed, everywhere. I felt dizzy, sick. I messaged Chris straight away. We couldn't believe it, but it was true. The Prince of Darkness had gone, and he had left the greatest heavy metal concert the world would ever see as a crescendo to his legacy. Ozzy wasn't just a singer, he was a cultural icon. A symbol of an entire genre and subculture. That night helped me reconnect with a part of myself. His death, while expected, hit like a hammer. So what now? Well, life goes on. We can still listen to his music, watch his shows, read his stories. In some ways, nothing has changed. But things have changed. The world has lost one of its brightest, weirdest, most wonderful lights. The Osbournes have lost their patriarch, and the rest of us, we've lost a legend. All we can do now is honour him. I'll be forever proud, telling the kids and the grandkids that I was there at the Back to Beginning show. I saw Black Sabbath supported by many of the greatest heavy metal bands of all time, and I saw the man himself, the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy fucking Osbourne.